I've been a doctor for 30 years. I've held the hands of dying patients, delivered babies in the middle of the night, and stitched up wounds that would make most people faint. I thought I understood healing. I thought I knew what it meant to care for someone. Then Ezra walked into my examination room on a Tuesday afternoon in October, and everything I thought I knew became irrelevant. He wasn't even my patient initially. Dr. Morrison was supposed to see him, but she'd called in sick that morning, and the front desk shuffled her appointments to whoever had openings. I remember looking at the chart before I knocked on the door. Ezra Hayes, 32 years old, presenting with chronic headaches and fatigue. Routine. Simple. I'd seen 1,000 cases just like it. I opened the door, and there he was, sitting on the examination table in jeans and a green flannel shirt that made his eyes look almost emerald. He had dark hair that fell across his forehead, and when he looked up at me, he smiled this small, apologetic smile that did something strange to my chest. I was 53 years old. I'd been married once, divorced for 15 years. I'd buried whatever questions I had about myself under decades of medical school, residency, building a practice, becoming the kind of doctor everyone trusted. And in that moment, looking at this man I'd never met before, something cracked open inside me that I didn't know how to close. "I'm Dr. Reed Ashford," I said, extending my hand. "Dr. Morrison is out today, so I'll be seeing you." His handshake was warm and firm. "Ezra," he said, "thanks for fitting me in." I sat down on the rolling stool and pulled up his intake forms on the tablet. "So you've been experiencing headaches and fatigue. How long has this been going on?" "About 6 months," he said. At first I thought it was just stress from work. I'm a graphic designer, and I was on this intense deadline for a rebrand project. But the project ended 2 months ago, and I still feel exhausted all the time. And the headaches are getting worse. I asked him the standard questions. Where did the headaches center? Were they accompanied by nausea or vision changes? What was his sleep schedule like? His diet? Exercise routine? He answered everything thoughtfully, and I found myself noticing things that had nothing to do with medicine. The way his fingers drummed lightly on his knee when he was thinking. The slight rasp in his voice. The fact that he made eye contact when he spoke. Really looked at me. Like he was actually interested in connecting with another human being instead of just getting through an appointment. I performed the physical examination, checking his blood pressure, listening to his heart and lungs, examining his eyes and throat. Everything seemed normal, but I could see the fatigue in the shadows under his eyes, the slight pallor to his skin. I ordered a full blood panel, thyroid function tests, vitamin levels. "Let's get a complete picture of what's going on," I said. "It could be anything from a vitamin deficiency to a thyroid issue. We'll figure it out." He nodded, and then he said something that surprised me. "You actually seem like you care. Most doctors I've seen lately treat me like I'm just another name on a schedule." I paused in my typing. "Every patient matters," I said, and I meant it. But there was something else I didn't say. You matter. You, specifically, in a way I don't understand yet. Over the next few weeks, Ezra came back for follow-up appointments as we worked through his test results. His thyroid was slightly underactive, which explained some of the fatigue, and he was severely deficient in vitamin D and B12. I started him on medication and supplements, and we scheduled regular check-ins to monitor his progress. But somewhere in those appointments, something shifted between us. The conversations lasted longer than they needed to. He'd ask me about my day, and I'd find myself actually telling him, sharing stories about difficult cases or hospital politics. He told me about his design work, showed me his portfolio on his phone, and I was genuinely fascinated by the way he saw color and composition, the way he could create something beautiful out of nothing. I started looking forward to his appointments in a way that felt dangerous. I'd check my schedule in the morning and feel this little lift in my chest when I saw his name. I'd find myself thinking about things he'd said, remembering the exact tone of his laugh. I told myself it was just because he was a pleasant patient, someone I was successfully helping. I told myself a lot of lies during those weeks. It was during his fourth appointment that things changed. His symptoms were improving, and we were discussing potentially spacing out his visits to every other month instead of every 2 weeks. "That's great news," I said, typing notes into his file. "You're responding well to the treatment?" "Yeah," he said, but his voice sounded flat. "I guess I won't need to come in as often anymore." I looked up from the tablet. "That's the goal, right? Get you healthy so you don't need to see me." He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "What if I wanted to see you anyway?" My heart stopped. I set the tablet down slowly. "Ezra," I said carefully, "I'm your doctor." "I know," he said, "and you've been amazing. You've actually helped me when other doctors just kept dismissing what I was feeling. But Reed, I come to these appointments, and I look forward to them all week. Not because I love sitting in examination rooms, but because I get to talk to you. And I see the way you look at me sometimes, like you're seeing me and not just my symptoms. Tell me I'm imagining that." I should have shut it down immediately. I should have been professional, maintained boundaries, explained the ethics of doctor-patient relationships. Instead, I sat there looking at him, at this beautiful man who was 15 years younger than me, who was brave enough to say out loud what I'd been trying desperately not to feel. And I said, "You're not imagining it." The air in the room changed. We stared at each other, and I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "I can't be your doctor anymore," I said finally. "If there's going to be anything between us, I have to transfer your care to someone else. That's not negotiable." "Okay," he said softly. "Transfer my care. Are you sure?" I asked. "Because Ezra, I'm 53 years old. I've never been with a man. I don't even know if I know how to do this, whatever this is." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his whole face. "I'm sure," he said, "and we'll figure it out together." I transferred his care to Dr. Chen the next day. It took me a week to work up the courage to call Ezra's number, which I definitely wasn't supposed to have anymore but had written down before I transferred his file. My hands were shaking when I dialed. He answered on the second ring. "Hi," I said. "This is Reed. I was wondering if you'd like to get coffee sometime." "As not your doctor." "I'd love that," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We met at a small cafe downtown on a Saturday morning. I got there early and sat at a corner table, my coffee growing cold as I second-guessed everything. What was I doing? I was a respected physician, set in my ways, comfortable in my routine. I'd dated women on and off since my divorce, but nothing serious, nothing that made me feel anything beyond mild companionship. And now here I was, about to have coffee with a man I couldn't stop thinking about, ready to upend everything I thought I knew about myself. Then Ezra walked in, and he was wearing a blue sweater and jeans, and when he saw me, his whole face lit up, and I stopped questioning. I just knew. We talked for 3 hours. The coffee shop filled up and emptied out around us, and we just kept talking. He told me about growing up in Portland, about coming out to his parents when he was 16, about moving to the city for design school, and never leaving. I told him about medical school, about my marriage that had been more friendship than passion, about my daughter, who was almost his age and lived in Boston. I told him things I'd never told anyone, about the loneliness of being good at your job, but feeling like something essential was missing from your life. When we finally left the cafe, it was early afternoon. We walked through the park, and at some point, his hand brushed against mine, and then his fingers were lacing through mine, and we were holding hands like teenagers. And I didn't care who saw us. I didn't care about anything except the feeling of his skin against mine, the rightness of it. "Can I see you again?" he asked when we reached the parking lot. "Tomorrow," I said, and he laughed. Tomorrow works. We started seeing each other every day. He'd come to my place after I finished at the clinic, and we'd cook dinner together in my kitchen that suddenly didn't feel too big and empty anymore. Or I'd meet him at his apartment, a third-floor walk-up filled with his design work and plants he was terrible at keeping alive, and we'd order takeout and watch movies on his couch. We talked about everything and nothing. He told me about his dreams of starting his own design firm. I told him about the free clinic I'd always wanted to open in the underserved part of the city. We shared our fears and our hopes. And slowly, carefully, we learned each other. The first time he kissed me, we were standing in my kitchen. I was washing dishes and he was drying, and he set down the towel and turned to me and said, "I'm going to kiss you now. Is that okay?" I nodded, unable to speak, and he cupped my face in his hands and kissed me so gently it made my chest ache. I'm 53 years old, and I'd never been kissed like that, like I was something precious, something worth savoring. When we pulled apart, I had tears in my eyes. "Hey," he said softly, brushing them away with his thumb. "You okay?" "I'm more than okay," I said. "I'm just realizing I've been half asleep my whole life, and you're waking me up." The physical intimacy developed slowly. I was nervous in ways I'd never been nervous before. But Ezra was patient and gentle, and made me feel safe. The first time we made love, in my bedroom with moonlight coming through the windows, I understood what people meant when they talked about coming home. His body against mine felt like the answer to a question I'd been asking my entire life without knowing it. But it wasn't all easy. I struggled with what to tell people. My colleagues at the hospital knew I was seeing someone, but I was vague about details. My daughter Sarah called one Sunday, and when she asked if I was dating anyone, I said yes, but couldn't bring myself to say anything more. I hated myself for that hesitation, for the fear that still lived in me, even as I fell deeper in love with Ezra every day. He never pushed me. He understood that I was navigating new territory, that coming out at 53 was different than coming out at 16. But I could see the hurt in his eyes sometimes when I'd change the subject or become evasive. I knew I was asking him to be patient with my fear, and that wasn't fair. The turning point came 4 months into our relationship. We were at a hospital fundraiser, one of those black tie events I usually dreaded. I'd gone alone, as always, even though Ezra had offered to come with me. I told him it would be boring, that he didn't need to waste his evening. The truth was I was afraid of what people would think, what they'd say, afraid of not being the person they thought I was. I was standing by the bar, nursing a scotch and making small talk with other doctors, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ezra, just a photo of him on his couch in sweatpants with his laptop, captioned, "Wild Saturday Night." I smiled at my phone, and something in my chest twisted painfully. Here I was, in a room full of people, feeling completely alone, while the person I loved was sitting at home because I was too afraid to bring him with me. Dr. Ashford, one of my colleagues, said, pulling me back to the conversation. We were just discussing the new cardiology wing. "What do you think about the proposed budget?" "I think I need to go," I said abruptly. "I'm sorry. There's somewhere I need to be." I left the fundraiser, still in my tuxedo, and drove straight to Ezra's apartment. I took the stairs 2 at a time and knocked on his door, breathing hard. He opened it looking confused and concerned. "Reed, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm done being afraid," I said. "I'm done pretending that the most important thing in my life doesn't exist when I'm at work or with certain people. You're the most important thing in my life, Ezra. You make me happier than I've ever been. You make me feel like myself for the first time. And I'm sorry I've been too much of a coward to show the world that." He pulled me inside and into his arms. "You're not a coward," he said. "You're brave. You're the bravest person I know." I told my daughter the next day. I called her and said, "Sarah, I need to tell you something. I'm in a relationship with someone, and I'm very serious about him. His name is Ezra." There was a pause, and then she said, "Him?" "Yes," I said. "I know this might be surprising, but I need you to know that I've never been happier. He's kind and smart and he makes me laugh, and I love him." Another pause, longer this time, and my heart was pounding. Then Sarah said, "Dad, I don't care if you're dating a man or a woman or anyone in between. I just want you to be happy. You've been alone for so long. If this person makes you happy, then I'm happy for you. When do I get to meet him?" I had to pull over because I was crying too hard to drive safely. We talked for an hour, and she told me she'd always wondered if I was truly happy, if there was something I was denying about myself. She said she loved me and supported me, and she wanted to meet Ezra as soon as possible. Coming out at work was harder. I told my closest colleague, Dr. Martinez, over lunch one day. I expected judgment, or at least discomfort. Instead, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "It's about time, Reed," she said. "I've known you for 15 years, and I've never seen you truly light up when talking about someone you were dating. Until now. Every time you mention Ezra, your whole face changes. Gradually, I told more people. Some were surprised, some weren't, but most were supportive. There were a few who grew distant, a few whose eyes held judgment when they looked at me now, but I found I cared less than I'd thought I would. I had Ezra, and I had people who loved me for who I actually was, and that was enough. Ezra met Sarah 6 months into our relationship. We flew to Boston for a weekend, and I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since my medical board exams. But within an hour of meeting, Sarah and Ezra were laughing together like old friends. And she pulled me aside at one point and whispered, "Dad, he's perfect for you. Don't screw this up." I proposed to Ezra on the 1-year anniversary of the day we met. Not the day we first had coffee, but the actual day he walked into my examination room and changed my life. I took him back to my office after hours, to that same examination room, and I got down on one knee right there on the linoleum floor. "I thought I knew what healing meant," I said. "I thought it was about fixing what was broken, curing diseases, mending wounds. But you taught me that healing is about becoming whole. You healed parts of me I didn't even know were damaged. You made me brave enough to be myself. Ezra Hayes, will you marry me?" He said yes. Of course, he said yes. We got married 6 months later, in a small ceremony in my backyard, surrounded by the people who loved us. Sarah was my best man. Ezra's parents flew in from Portland. Dr. Martinez and Dr. Chen were there. It was simple and perfect. And when I kissed my husband for the first time as a married couple, I felt like my life was finally, actually beginning. That was 3 years ago. We're still learning each other, still discovering new layers. Ezra started his design firm last year, and I finally opened that free clinic I'd dreamed about. We work too much, and we're always tired, but we're tired together. We have coffee every morning at our kitchen table, and we talk about our days. And sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. Last month, a young doctor at the hospital came to me during a break. He was maybe 30, and he looked nervous. "Dr. Ashford," he said, "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted to thank you. I'm gay, and I've been terrified about being out at work. But seeing you with your husband, seeing that you can be yourself and still be respected, still be a good doctor, it's given me courage." I thought about that scared, lonely man I used to be, the one who thought he had to hide essential parts of himself to be taken seriously. I thought about Ezra walking into my examination room and cracking open my carefully constructed walls. I thought about all the years I'd wasted being afraid. "It gets better," I told the young doctor. "Not just easier, but better. Be yourself. The people who matter will love you for it. I've been a doctor for 30 years, and I've learned a lot about healing bodies. But Ezra taught me something more important. He taught me that sometimes healing means having the courage to break open, to let someone see all of you, even the parts you've been hiding from yourself. He taught me that love isn't about finding someone who completes you, but finding someone who helps you become more completely yourself." I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life alone, comfortable but empty, good at my job but half asleep in my own life. Then a man with green eyes and an apologetic smile walked through my door, and everything changed. He didn't fix me because I wasn't broken. He just loved me enough to help me see that I was allowed to be whole. That's what healing really means. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of love. Not fixing what's broken, but having the courage to be vulnerable, to be seen, to let yourself be transformed by another person's presence in your life. I'm 56 years old now. I'm a doctor, a husband, a father. I'm a man who spent most of his life hiding, and now I'm a man who's learning what it means to live fully, to love openly, to be exactly who I am. And every morning when I wake up next to Ezra, when I see him sleeping peacefully beside me, I'm grateful for that Tuesday afternoon in October. I'm grateful for the appointment that changed everything. I'm grateful that sometimes the best healing happens when you're brave enough to let yourself be vulnerable, to admit you don't have all the answers, to let love in even when it's terrifying. 30 years as a doctor taught me how to heal bodies. One patient taught me how to heal my soul. And that's made all the difference.